Good day, everyone. We are on another episode of GAD Talks, and tonight we have Eljay Bernardo, a member of the Rainbow Rights Philippines, and he is going to talk about the strength of the law and maybe, of course, what's left to improve in Philippine law when it comes to pursuing gender equality. Good day to you, Eljay. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay in spite of the pandemic.
That is
Good day to all of you as well.
very good to hear. So, can we talk a little bit about your organization, the Rainbow Rights Philippines? Can
All
you
right.
tell us something about your organization, please?
So, Rainbow Rights Philippines is a legal organization. It focuses on legal research, policy advocacy, and legal education. But we also dabble a little bit in litigation now that we have more people coming in. So that's basically it for our small organization. We were established in 2005. There was a case before where LGBTQI plus people were suddenly being arrested, and then there are no lawyers for the community. So a group of lawyers from the UP College of Law banded together and formed this organization. And ever since 2005, we have been visible in the community and promoting legal rights and also advocating for more inclusive policies.
I think do you accept teachers perhaps as
Of
members?
course,
Because
of
our
course.
uh,
But you will have to undergo a paralegal training so that you become a legal expert of sorts for the community.
well, that's that's really good to know because some members or some graduates of Philippine Normal University actually go to law school afterwards, and we've
I've
had
heard.
we
Actually, I have a
also
classmate
oh
from
in
PNU.
law school who's from PNU. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Did my my first question to you is that of course obviously I could tell that you're a smart person, and you know how smart
Thank
people
you. Wow.
you know how smart people know to get away from danger, from risk. And now law is a practice that is very power oriented, as you know. It's really all about power and authority, and yes, of course there's a lot of logic and reasoning, but it's really about authority. It's a very power oriented industry. And the thing about marginalized groups such as the LGBTQ is that by definition, they are stripped of power. They are, well, marginalized. They're pushed on the edge. So what made you, pursue law even though you know that you are one of those who are marginalized? And didn't that, put you in some very challenging situations?
Yes, in a way, that is a consideration before. But whenever you think of it, I always think of it as we need more representatives, we need more um, representation even in the field. So that's also a motivation. That's the flip side of it. And in a way, we are taught in UP law that really doesn't matter what the package is. What is important is how powerful. If we're talking about power, how powerful are your mind? How powerful are your pleadings? How powerful do you write things? And in a way, we are also taught in law school that banding together is one way to show and to negate those powers that wants to oppress us and marginalize us. So in UP, one of the best things in the UP College of Law, one of the best things that I had as an experience being a member of the LGBTQI plus community is to form this organization called UP Outlaws. And from that, I got acquainted to Rainbow Rights. I got acquainted with the members of Rainbow Rights Philippines, and I pursued this line of lawyering and practice.
When you say UP Outlaws, uh, that's a very interesting name. I imagine you guys are a group of disenfranchised law students, in one way or another. Can you talk a little bit more about the UP Outlaws?
Well, the UP Outlaws is a organization of UP law students who are members of the LGBTQI plus community and also allies. So we open it for those who want to join us with a with informing the college and mainstreaming LGBTQIA legal landscape, um, research and education.
Mm,
Also, it was formed at the height of the marriage equality passage in the US when Obergefell versus Hodges was decided. That case is about, of course, marriage equality. So basically, the United States eventually has legalized same-sex marriage. So we all knew that seeds of the movement must be planted in the Philippines. So that started it. And we also knew that in numbers there is power. And
mm.
also that's the guiding principle of Pride Month, basically, is to show everyone that you have force, show everyone that you exist, and coming out and being visible is one of the main things to combat marginalization and oppression.
That's good to know that as early as being a law student in UP, you're able to to be part of this UP Outlaw, and I think that's a really powerful initiative that maybe some of our students would pick up on, of course, as they I guess continue on their masters or even in law school or other post college engagements. I just feel that you're so brave in doing this, and I know that you have a very good sense. You've explained it. You have a very good sense of how to attain power in spite of being, by default stripped of it or, removed from it. You know about the strategy of, banding together, having the right, education, having intelligence and wisdom and all that, and being with others. But I am interested to know if, despite all your efforts to actually gain power, did you still experience discrimination because you're LGBTQ?
Of course, we can sense it, even if people would say that in this university, for example, my own university, it's more inclusive. But however, we can still feel that people are discriminating against us. For example, there are teachers who judge students by the way they speak and the way they dress and the way they answer, even how their voice sounds. No, so in those instances, I remember I had a professor that I debated with, kind of. I asked, I don't know how do you put it. I commented on, I commented on his stance on LGBTQ plus human rights. So I said, it should be universal, right? Because he was saying that it is not universal. It is an invention of Western states. Now it's being exported here in the Philippines. So I just explained to him our heritage about the Babaylans,
Correct.
about the
Yes.
Catalonans, di ba? So surprisingly, even if I got good grades in the exams there, my resulting grade was not that high. But of course, I didn't pursue it anymore. But in those instances, I felt like I am being singled out. In a way, there's also organizations that will try to how do you call this, filter out those they think are diverse of sexual orientation. For example, fraternities, because fraternities have to be cis heterosexual man. So in a way, those things we don't have access to that, even if it's being said that there are, it's more inclusive in UP. So in a way, you also felt that you are part of a community that cannot access a lot of these opportunities. Given professors that are maybe backward thinking, organizations that traditionally do not accept diverse sexual orientations and gender identities, facilities, even in CRs, we do not have a gender neutral CR in the university, and I doubt that they allow um, for trans people to use the CRs that conform to their gender identities. So in those instances, you feel like that there's still discrimination, and those are the things that you fight in the campus. So to answer the question, did I still feel discriminated? Yes. However, I there's a lot of help from my advocacy and from the people that surrounded me because we had this organization.
Okay, well, you know what? While listening to your answer, I was reminded of the first UP graduate who I actually interviewed last February, and she had she's part of the LGBTQ as well, and she has a very similar story that there's this confrontation, with a professor also in UP, of course, and in the end she felt that she did not get the grade that she should have, knowing, complied with everything and performed on a certain level that of course was not reflected on her grade. And she's I think a senior of yours. I mean, I'm looking at you and I remember her. So there must be some around 5 to 10 year gap, and UP still has this, and I'm beginning to worry a bit because UP is the best university in the Philippines, and if we're talking about inclusivity,
Supposedly.
well, well, yeah, and well, the records do show that. I mean, the studies and all that, and at least it's there, one of the top, and still we have these issues. So that just, of course, this is not saying something against UP, but this is a reflection of just how kind of messed up the
Yeah, it's really
Filipino
pervasive.
the
Yeah.
Filipino culture is. Even our best institutions still have this kind of toxic culture, and it's kind of for me it's, well, quite alarming. So I really wish we could change that in soon. you know
And
um
that and you mentioning that story, you could see how we share our experiences each other. So it just hit me that, oh, that's a shared experience. So in that instance, if if I knew her and we banded together and we formed this organization, that's basically what we were doing in the UP College of Law back then.
that's a really good strategy, banding together. You have all these same stories and enemies, right? And that's what you're really preparing for, of course. um
People we have to convince.
yeah, or disempower. you know if they're not convinced. Now you're talking about, and we've talked about professors in UP, and I'm sure there, again, this is not specific on UP. This is, of course,
Of
all over
course.
the country. We would know that for sure. But now that you're practicing law, and you know how lawyers are always careful because they've been trained to be careful with how they
Yes.
speak, and not to
Yes.
offend people, and of course they also have this kind of skill to treat their clients well. So I've had like 6 months of law school, so I can pretend a little bit that I know more about law than I really do. Anyway, my question is that, okay, so professors, smug professors like those, they do those things. They still discriminate, but have you been discriminated by people in your profession who should know better, who should know that it's risky to actually make these kind of actions? Have you experienced that so far?
Actually, I've heard stories because I don't think I have experienced that. My experience is that extensive on that because of the pandemic. I am a pandemic lawyer,
Ah,
so I do not really engage with a lot of lawyers in person. But what I saw, or what has been relayed to me, for example, there are policies like dress code. In courts, you have to wear a specific kind of attire, and that attire is actually is prescriptive based on what? Based on sex. Based males and females are explicitly, there's a Supreme Court circular saying that men and males should wear this and females should wear this. So in a way, a lot of for example, a lot of people who have diverse gender expressions are already discriminated against from that policy alone. And of course, you have heard of these. Depends on because a lot of people are misogynist. A lot of people are insensitive. And most of these people, and I would say that some of it, unfortunately, are seated at the how do I say this without being found for contempt?
Yeah, yeah.
This unfortunate because well, it has been observed, no,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there are judges, that there
Yes.
are lawyers who are very misogynist and are very insensitive with their language, and who would love to judge you and your case and your whatever your briefs, your pleadings on the basis of how you are seen or perceived. So, but it's not only in the legal field. So this is a medyo pervasive siya in all of the fields. So the legal field is not better. Can I just say that? As all the other fields. And one proof of that are the policies that exist. For example, the dress codes that exist, it's not inclusive. The language used by law is not inclusive. If you also see um, the laws, how are they written, it's very gendered in a way that's discriminatory, not really gendered in a way that it uplifts a gender minority. So so I dread, of course, I know that it exists in the field, that there could be discrimination with the way I speak, even if I'm not a member of the community. For example, let's just say I'm a cis street
Yeah,
man.
what if you're a street lawyer like Harry Roque, right? Like, let's just put it.
Yeah. For example him, but he's so judged because of the way he speaks, right, and the way his mannerisms are, and that is connected to what, to homosexuality for a lot of
Okay.
the di ba narinig natin yan in social
Yes, yes.
media. He has been receiving criticisms because of the way he speaks, his antics, and that is perception only, no. So in a way, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
There's a lot of pressure to conform to what is so and so-called natural way of things. Like if you're a man, you should have a broad shoulders, should have a deeper voice, should have a mustache, should have a beard, for example, should dress a particular way. So if you just move out of those extremely boxed stereotypes, you suddenly become discriminated. And it's on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. It doesn't choose if you're straight, if you're trans, if you just fall outside that very restrictive box. And
Correct.
it's discriminatory.
I'm particularly, I guess, saddened knowing, I just heard that now from you, that there is a dress a dress code
Yeah,
for
it's a Supreme
lawyers.
Court circular. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I'm a bit confused because as far as I know, of course, again, not a lawyer, but RA 11313 kind of leads to, gender expression. Yeah, it's not really there yet, right? But it kind of leads to that, and I think part of gender expression is how you dress, and then here we have the Supreme
Yeah.
Court regulating that, and not according to rank, or not according to, other factors, but according to sex or gender, which
Yeah.
is
The Supreme
contrary.
Court has Supreme Court defines gender as if it's an indispensable um tool of the trade, no? Like for example, pag men ka, ganito lang dapat, or else you will not function. If you were
Wow.
female, expressing those, you will not function. That's the message has been said. But also, let me just note, no, that the Integrated Bar of the Philippines already is moving towards the amendment of these circulars, and we hope that in the future there will be no prescription as to what males and females should be wearing.
Are
They
you
should
saying
just
that are you saying that in the future, a lawyer could just enter the courtroom, a male lawyer, in skirt?
for example, yeah, it shouldn't be a question, no? That the Supreme Court, what our suggestion is Supreme Court should just tell us what kinds of clothes are allowed in the courts,
Hmm.
but not gender it,
Okay.
meaning do not a
Okay.
distinction between men and women, for example.
All right, that would make sense because of course gender
Mm.
expression again. This it's all about
But
not.
I know, yeah, but I know it's gonna be hard, no, because these are built-in, um, how do you call this, norms in
Yes,
the court,
correct.
and it's really hard to break that. However, but with logic, no, we hope that the eventual developments will really see that the way I dress, the way I speak, the way I comb my hair, for example, does not in any way affect the power of my legal
Correct.
argumentation, the power of my cross examination, for example,
Right,
and the
right.
power of my legal strategy.
That's correct. But let me ask you something specific though about the dress code. Can right now are you allowed? Let's say you just want to. Are you allowed to wear heavy makeup?
I don't think there's a prescription on makeup, but I remember what's written is basically clothes, no, blazers. Women should wear blazers, should wear closed shoes, should wear skirts more
Well,
that are lower to
that's
the
like
knees,
dep ed.
not lower. Oh, yeah.
It's starting to sound like a dep ed teacher. You know how they're also backwards like this. Uh,
Yeah, I really hope they see the light, no, because it's really hard for institutions to be left behind, and there are feelings of discrimination. Of course, you can stop that, no. It's a feeling, and if you are not allowed to express yourself, that's very hard for a person, no.
you know,
Yeah,
and
they just amended the rules, basically in the rules of court, and all of the male pronouns they put him or her.
oh,
So in a
good,
way, you can see
good.
where they're moving.
Yeah, yeah. That's. I think that's a really good progress. That's real
Yeah,
progress.
maybe in the future will be there na.
Yes,
So hindi na binary.
considering other pronouns, that's correct. Well, let's
Yeah,
continue hoping for that. But again, I feel it's inevitable. It's just a matter of time. In fact, this it's not perfect, but the RA 11313 is also a sign of progress. Who
yeah.
could have guessed? I mean, I lived during the 90s, I could not have imagined that something like that, the Safe Spaces Act, could
We
be.
hope that it gets implemented really, really to the letter.
Yeah, yeah. We do hope that. And speaking of implemented to the letter. I actually have a legal question. I hope you don't mind, because right
Yeah, of course.
now UCGD, and I also hope you don't charge me. No, I'm kidding. No, UCGD right now. My office is trying to get approved the localization of the Safe Spaces Act. Of course, we government institutions are legally required to do that,
Yes.
and my staff and I, who's a Juris Doctor, and she planning to take her exam this November. We were
November.
discussing a bit about the term reasonable knowledge. In anti-sexual, I'm sure you know, but for our viewers, the anti-sexual harassment law back in 1995 needed a formal complaint, for the institution to launch an actual
Yeah.
investigative committee or that process. However, the safe spaces does it, to me, and so far my understanding is it does not need a formal complaint. It says there specifically that even if the
Yes.
complaint is withdrawn or there is no complaint, as long as the institution has reasonable knowledge, then an investigation must be recommended, something like that. Now, my question is, and our question actually as an office is, what counts as reasonable knowledge? You know?
Case to case. It's case to
Ah,
case question. No, usually this I think the vision for this provision and for this term, reasonable knowledge, is to determine how liable the school is. Di ba? Because there are liability for schools if they don't act. So now, if ever a person comes to court, or to a body saying that my school did not act and it had reasonable knowledge, then it becomes an evidentiary matter that
mm,
the complainant will now um, provide why the school has reasonable knowledge. Were did they receive a complaint? If there's no complaint, was it relayed to The Cody, for example, was it rampant in social media that to an extent that the school should not be able to deny knowledge of it? Was it published? For those things, so it's case to case basis. Reasonable knowledge now becomes a matter of how a complainant proves that a school has reasonable knowledge. So for schools, of course, you have it also signifies that schools and training institutions should exercise extreme diligence in this area because the wording has been a little bit, I think it's not vague, but it's a little bit easy to prove, just reasonable knowledge. So that means the school need to really have monitoring mechanisms that will say that it did not have reasonable knowledge because what did it do? It it had due diligence in trying to know what happened with students, what are happening with students, the professors, what are they doing in class and outside of class. So that's it. It's
Okay.
really something very expansive. So on one part, it's evidentiary. Another part, it gives the school an impetus so that they become more stringent in monitoring their students. No, because if you can show a court that you are very stringent about these things, then you can show that you do not have reasonable knowledge.
Okay, well, that's some. Thank you. I think I learned a couple of. I'm picking up a couple of things from that explanation. But I'm asking this because as head of the UCGD, it's up to me to design these monitoring
Yeah.
mechanisms, right? And it gets. I have a lot of questions. Like what if it was just one person, but the account was detailed? I mean, if there was just one question who mentioned it, of course, I don't think that would count as reasonable knowledge. But if a certain person approached me and then like had that detail and had dates and all that, but it's just still one person. I mean, am I? Of course, personally, I would investigate. I trust these people from the
Uh,
marginalized genders, but am I feel morally obliged, but my question is, am I already legally obliged?
You might be, you might be,
Okay.
because the law protects or promotes. No, the law recognizes that reporting is very, very minimal at a minimal level because a lot of students do not report these things. So if you got wind of something, then the law says that, hey, you really have to check it out because no one will report it to you.
Okay, well, it's good to hear
Mhm.
that from you. I think we're on the right track, Rosel. Because this is kind of our agreement that, yeah, even these small things, I think
Yeah,
we have the
also protecting yourself and also thinking about
correct,
the
correct.
gender minorities that do not really report these things.
Yes, and it takes some people would always, of course, dismiss that. Oh, it's just one person and just what. And now she stopped, right? But we know from research that it takes a lot of courage to actually fight and
Yes.
to express how
Courage, energy, resources,
correct. So
emotional stability.
I'm happy to hear this from you. I think this responds well to the agreement I have with my legal technical assistant that yeah, if we hear anything, we're gonna pursue that. We're gonna write it, formally, and then we're gonna pursue that and recommend that to our superiors. It's also one way to protect ourselves.
You also might be the first educational institution to have the localized rules, no? So if that is an added motivation for you, then push for it as soon as possible so that you have something to say or something to show your superiors that, hey, we are the first university in the Philippines to come up with localized rules on a section on the Safe Spaces Act. Because I don't think UP has. The CSC had, but they are not a training institution.
Correct.
But
And there's also another thing that me and I and my legal staff are trying to discuss is about the composition of the CODI, right? So it's explicitly stated there that the CODI chair should be a woman. Okay, and I, of course, I
And
that's
majority of the Cody should be women.
correct. That's another pointer there. My question is this though: that will the law recognize a trans woman as a CODI chair?
Yeah, I think it should, because I think if if the Safe Spaces Act is the basis, it has sexual gender identity concepts in it. So, of course, a trans woman should be considered a woman, legally speaking, under the Safe Spaces Act, and it just negates the whole Safe Spaces Act if we would bar a trans woman from being a member or part of the majority of women to be or being a chair of the CODI. So it could be, of course, in my
Okay, and
view, because that would be absurd, no? That a law that protects gender identity concepts would then be discriminatory for transgender identity. So what's important here is, again, just to show that nothing will change, no? The world will not end if
correct.
if a trans woman or a trans man changes their gender markers. Sabi nila,
Yes,
de pamilya, but that's unsupported by evidence in a lot of countries. This actually ushered in more development and more
true.
openness and
That's
more
true.
intelligent, and more higher education levels,
Correct,
actually.
correct. That's true. The countries with that have reached good levels of egalitarianism when it comes to gender have displayed so much productivity, and the innovation that their workers, their citizens have come up with are really amazing. So, if anything, data suggests that pursuing these equality, in gender, actually is a good thing for any society.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
you think of it, equality is always a good policy. Why? It removes the burdens of a person. So if that person has removed the burdens of, for example, in this particular strand, gender, then they will have more time to think about what benefits their communities, what benefits their, for example, corporations, what will benefit their nations, di ba? Instead of thinking about how will I survive today without being harassed or without being subjected to discrimination, they
correct,
could think of more productive things.
correct,
And
correct.
that's just counterintuitive, no?
Yeah, that's PNU demographics. Our students come from very humble families. So perhaps that's one of the early, initial challenges that they would have is that they will not have the
Mm.
capacity to have a lawyer's services. So what
Mm.
are their options when it comes to that?
Well, they can go to legal aids. For example, a lot of law schools have legal aids, meaning you go there and they will provide you with the legal services, and sometimes for the students, for the law students to learn. There's also the public attorney's office, the CHR, and NGOs like Rainbow Rights Philippines could also give you advice. But yeah, I see the problem. Maybe a lot of you may not be as well versed in the law, and you may not be as available to find help right away. But the thing is, it's always, I think there will always be evidence. No, if you have experienced something like harassment, your testimony is actually good evidence of it, and that they can take away from you, right? If you have experienced it yourself. A lot of sexual harassment cases do not have witnesses. Di ba? Minsan it happens in the privacy of a stall, or of
Correct.
a non-lit, for example, corner of the campus. So those things, you might find it, oh my god, I might not have enough evidence, but your testimony and your experience, actual evidence, you will be cross-examined to check if you're lying, and then you have to convince, your lawyer has to convince a judge. So there, that's your duty as a client, for example, if you experience that, is just to try to document as much as possible, and do not discount the power of your testimony, I guess.
So there is power in their testimony, and And
Oh, yeah, of course. Because in these cases, sometimes there are really no witnesses, no. So what the judges and the investigating committees are trying to find out is whether or not your stories lack consistency. But you won't be pressed for pinpoint accuracy as long as you have the general idea of what happened. Of course, your memory can fade, no? You don't have to remember every little detail of the harassment that you experience. And actually, that's sometimes the mental defense, di ba? You forget bad things.
correct,
So that's
selective
also
memory.
recognized legally.
That's good, and it's good that you're talking about the importance of their basic, their raw testimony, because a lot of the strategies of predators, and this is also according to research, is that
Yeah.
they gaslight their
They
victim.
gaslight.
Yes,
Yeah.
like no one will believe you.
100% of them.
Yeah, yeah. They would say, "Look, I'm a distinguished, published, this and that." They will never believe you, but
Actually, I don't know if it's 100%, maybe 98.
yeah, but I
I'm
think it's
kidding.
a really, really high. I think it's really prevalent that gaslighting their victims is one of the most common strategies of these predators. And it's good that we're emphasizing now that that is not true. Do not listen to that, because the law places special attention and recognizes the statement of the victim as a very powerful source of evidence.
Yeah.
So we need.
You know what I love about the Safe Spaces Act is
Yeah.
that it mandates gender sensitive mechanisms and procedures. So, in a way, historically, as we have said, a lot of perpetrators, they try to gaslight their victims. They try to retaliate against their victims. Meaning, makikick out na lang sila suddenly, disciplinary cases against them. So the Safe Spaces Act actually provides that this should not happen anymore. No, yung mga gaslight. Although sometimes it happens, but you can already always say that, oops, Safe Spaces Act actually says that that's not allowed anymore. That your line of questioning should not involve gaslighting, should not involve victim blaming. However, this happens very scant. No, you have to remind always because sometimes it becomes very instinctual for the defense or the respondents to become abusive of the way they question the victims. But in essence, the victims have the right to stop that kind of questioning because it's not gender sensitive anymore. It might become more traumatic for them. It might leave scars for them for the rest of their lives. So that must be. So that's one of the beauty of the Safe Spaces Act. One of the
I've read the
beauties.
act, but I only realized what you're saying now that you've said it, and I think I can remember, watching those legal soap operas in the '90s, where
Yung
it's
pinapaamin, no? Okay.
yes, and they have very offensive lines of
Are you
questioning.
sure? Are you sure?
Yeah, the
Ganyan.
lawyers, and there's this particular line, of course, that's really just victim blaming and all that. The lawyer said, apparently, did you enjoy it? Or
Yeah, that's a very triggering
yeah, and
um, line of
very wrong.
questioning, and that's the lawyer of the victim should or the committee itself should stop that line of questioning because that's very triggering. You could be um, exposing or detrimenting the mental health of the victim.
True, and actually, most likely, that line of questioning, that word will harm the mental health of that person already
Yeah.
under stress in the middle of the room, talking about something
But
huge.
some judges allow that, no, because they are not knowledgeable.
Oh, how
And that's
sad!
what I hate sometimes. That's
How
what I hate.
sad! Integrated yet in the culture,
Yeah.
it will
But you
still
have to
happen.
remind, no? But you have to remind these people, no? If they don't accept it right away, just be firm in it. Actually, in that hearing, we made a Rainbow Rights made a manifestation that it's not correct to do that anymore because what has been sacrificed there might be the life of our client.
Correct.
So the way you have to be also firm, no? Yeah,
Yes.
you understand that it's kind of a new law, but you also have to be firm sometimes. And this time we really went the firm route.
Correct. There are cases where, you know, they cannot wait for the society to slowly ingest
Yeah, totoo.
new realization, and I understand that. And you know, what's good to understand is that as a new law, it will still have so many positive effects. We are only seeing, you know, the start of how it's going to change the landscape of our gender culture here in the Philippines. But in the
Yeah, given all the violence experienced
correct,
by trans folks, by lesbian, by the LGBT community in general,
yeah,
but more disproportionately by our trans brothers and sisters, no? So we really hope that the Safe Spaces Act become more institutionalized, because it has protections for transphobic remarks, no? So at least in that aspect, it could have an educating effect to the public that violence against trans people is not permitted. Of course, not permitted. And even remarks are not
correct.
permitted anymore.
Those are actually the really prevalent violent ones. The remarks, even silence, can sometimes be so hurtful to.
Yeah, merong non-verbal sexual harassment. Go ahead, Ella.
Ella.
So, good good evening po, sir. May kaso po kasi akong gusto sanang i-share.
Yes, go ahead.
Nagpaalam naman po ako dun sa tao na
Yeah, but let's not name them na lang.
na i-share ko siya at hihingi po ako ng advice regarding dun sa case po. Nangyari po kasi yung case a month ago. Tapos, may gathering po sila ng mga kaibigan niya. Tapos, wait lang po. Doon po sa gathering po na yon, nagkaroon daw po sila ng kasiyahan, which is meron pong involved na alak. Tapos doon po sa pangyayari na yun, ang nangyari daw po, bali daw po sa sobrang kalasingan ng grupo, hindi daw po sila umuwi nung gabing yon. At doon sila natulog doon sa bahay na kung saan po sila nagtipon-tipon. Tapos po, ang nangyari po doon, ang pagkakaalala daw po nung kaibigan ko, natulog daw po siya sa kwarto ng kaibigan niya. Magkakasama daw po sila doon. Pero po, in the middle of the night daw po, bigla na lang daw po siya nakita nung parent nung kaibigan niya na nasa sala po, kasama yung isang kaibigan nila, tapos wala po siyang pambaba. So, ayun po, naguguluhan po siya kung ano pong gagawin. Kasi mabigat po yung loob niya. Kahit po nung sinabi niya sa akin, hindi po ako mapatahimik ng ilang linggo na. Pero natatakot daw po siyang lumapit sa otoridad about.
Ganoon naman yung problema lagi. No?
Kasi hindi niya po talaga alam kung anong gagawin niya at ayaw niya din daw po madama yung ibang taong hindi naman involved doon. Kasi
yung ganong thinking, I think.
Mangyari kasi doon, madamay daw po yung lugar na pinagtipunan po nila. Kahit hindi naman dapat madam mga taong.
Ayun, I think kasi I think no, I want to address that notion na baka madaming madamay, laging natatakot sa madadamay. Pero of course, you have to think first, how will you have peace? Diba? How will you have peace of mind? So, pag ganun, I always say to the victim, for example, that they should always think of themselves first, no? What gives them peace. And if this notion is madami pa rin siya naisip na ayoko kasi ganyan, ayoko na ganito, isipin niya ng mabuti kung saan siya mapapanatag. Kasi minsan sa sobrang pagtingin mo dun sa kapakanan ng iba, ikaw na yung napabayaan, tapos dinala mo na ito buong buhay mo. And of course, they're not exactly blameless, no? The people who let this happen, for example, and the venue owners of the venue that they used, because first, it's pandemya, paano nagkaroon ng ganyang gathering, no? And secondly, the truth must come out. So they will have to be investigated. If they didn't do anything wrong, then they will not face any liability. Tama. But it takes a brave step forward, no, Ella, for this person to really recognize na she has no responsibility over other people na baka madamay. So baka yun yung naghihinder sa kanya na mag-report. Secondly, I want to address the fact that this person does not know what happened. And of course, there could be other pieces of evidence there. No, if she started an inquiry with the police ideally should be able to help her to get the medical reports for her. Should be able to devise ways on how to investigate her case. Of course, we hope that the police is sensitive when it comes to these matters, and that they should be. They have policies on that. But usually maganda rin if your friend can go to some legal aid, can find a legal aid provider, an NGO that can help represent her and really advocate her cause from investigation, maybe to the courts. So that's it. She does not, ayun lang. What I broke there is this idea of that she's helpless. She's not. She's not helpless. It's just this mentality that we have that we really need to break. We really try to protect other people. That we really try to not pursue things because of the people na madadamay. What could people think of me? Of course, it's a factor. It's a big factor. Pero we all hope that maybe the people surrounding her could provide a lot of support. And that includes you, no? So maybe if you all also provide a lot of support to her, she could overcome those obstacles.
So, Eljay, this has been a really good talk, and I know that you have inspired our Swiss. Would you like to leave us with a closing remark?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about what the current state of the law is, how it discriminates against LGBTQI plus people. But I think for closing, and since it's Pride Month, and then we already touched on this at the beginning of our session today, is that take part in the fight of the community and let your voice count. No, be integrated in that fabric, in that beautiful fabric of our community that is creative, intelligent, lively. And I hope that you also find, once you are integrated in that community, once you serve that community, that you also find a lot of meaning and and your particular lane, in a sense, on how to improve all of our lives together. And also your education that you're having right now. I'm really happy to have PNU partner with us in developing and how do you call it, promoting the rights of gender minorities. And I'm really excited and really happy for all of you that you have these resources now. I don't know, when I was in college or when I was in law school, we had to really do it on our own. And I'm really happy that you have a lot of support in your university as regards the challenges and as regards the rights in general of gender minorities, including LGBTQI plus people. So there, I hope you continue on and we continue to do the work and attend, I think, sessions like this.
We will have so many more sessions like this, of course, not just this year, but also in the following years. So I'm really grateful for your presence and for your motivational remarks and experiences that you've shared with us tonight. So thank you very much, Eljay, and we wish you and your organization more power. Thank you very much.
Kasi